What if history didn't tell us everything? What if faith and power crossed paths and Africa paid the price? These are the questions Africa was never allowed to ask. For centuries, a story was told, but key chapters were left in the shadows. This is a journey into that silence, a quest to understand not just what happened, but why. We are not here to dismantle belief, but to demand truth, to ask, to remember, to rise. In the mid-15th century, a series of papal decrees, known as the Papal Bulls, granted Christian empires a spiritual license. Documents like Dum Diversas in 1452 and Romanus Pontifex in 1455 authorized the monarchs of Portugal to conquer and enslave non-Christians in Africa and beyond. Holy language was woven into the fabric of imperial law. Conquest found a divine justification. When faith authorizes conquest, who speaks for the oppressed? As empires expanded across the Atlantic, the Church's economic life became deeply entangled with the systems of the New World. Across the Americas, vast church lands and religious orders were often worked by enslaved Africans. Institutions, even those dedicated to spiritual matters, reflected the economies they inhabited, frequently benefiting directly or indirectly from the labor of people held in bondage. The question that echoes through time is stark. Can mercy truly profit from chains? Africans were brought into the faith, baptized at the water's edge, yet this spiritual act did not grant them earthly freedom. Their souls were claimed for salvation, but their bodies remained in servitude. Faith did not change the law. Belief did not break their chains. This created a profound contradiction, a spiritual crisis that split body from soul and salvation from liberation. What is faith worth if it doesn't fundamentally change a person's life? During the peak centuries of the transatlantic slave trade, the institution that claimed moral authority over millions remained largely silent. While individual priests and missionaries may have decried the cruelty, there was no decisive, universal condemnation from the highest levels of the Church that could have stopped the Catholic empires of Portugal and Spain. This profound silence was not neutral. It was a form of permission, allowing the brutal system to continue, uninterrupted and unchallenged. The age of exploration was a joint venture. Catholic crowns, particularly those of Portugal and Spain, pioneered the early Atlantic routes. Missionaries traveled on the same ships as conquerors and traders. Their role was complex and often contradictory. Some sought to soften the brutalities of conquest, advocating for more humane treatment. Others, however, saw their mission as part of the imperial project, helping to pacify and control populations for the empire. When mission walks hand in hand with empire, who is truly leading the way? Look at the magnificent cathedrals that stand today as monuments to faith and history. Many of these sacred spaces in the Americas were built with the stone and sweat of enslaved hands. The very people who labored to raise these walls, to carve the altars and lift the spires, were often denied equality within them. Their forced labor created sanctuaries where they themselves could not find freedom or dignity. Whose stories are missing from our memorials? The sacrament of confession offered a path to absolution for sins. Slave owners could confess their wrongdoings, receive penance, and be absolved by a priest. Yet this repentance rarely required the one act of justice that mattered most, freeing the people they enslaved. It was a system of forgiveness without repair, a spiritual transaction that left the structure of oppression completely intact. What is repentance worth if it is separated from justice? It wasn't until much later that stronger, more unified opposition to slavery began to emerge from within the church. This shift often came after abolitionist movements had already gained significant momentum in society. But this turn toward justice arrived late, after centuries of immense suffering, after millions of lives had been destroyed, and after entire societies had been built on the foundations of human bondage. We must ask, what is the true cost of delayed justice? Out of this history of pain and paradox, Africa found and reclaimed a different faith. Not the faith of the empire, which blessed chains, but the faith of the oppressed. A faith centered on a Jesus who came to set captives free, to break yokes, and to challenge worldly powers. This is not an attack on belief. It is a call to honesty, a refusal to let history be forgotten. For in remembering the truth, we find the power to build a future where faith and freedom are never again torn apart. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to Limitless Living for more stories that challenge us to think deeper.